Good morning, everybody. Today we're going to continue on with more queries, do more complex ones, involving more difficult problems. So in my outbox, under Lab 3, there's a special market database, this Market 3 demo. That's what I'll be using here. If you want to play along, you can. Just drag it over to your own desktop and use it from there. So it's the same database we've been using for the last couple of weeks. I've added a couple of more tables to it to work through some stuff today, but it's pretty much the same. And let's just jump in, I guess. Go to Create, Query Design, and let's just pick Household for a second. That'll work for now. I want to talk about what we've been doing so far are called selection queries up here on the ribbon towards the left. Notice that little icon's been highlighted, the one that says selection. Well, there are other kinds of queries, and that's where we're going to start this morning. There's a make table. Well, just a way of review, right? If I wanted to pull out, something from the state of Massachusetts or whatever, right? I'd pick all the fields I'd want, and then I'd add whatever criteria I want, so on and so forth, right? And when I run this thing, it creates what I call the dynamic table. And it exists as long as it's open, but as soon as I close it, it goes away, but the query remains. There may be reasons why I want to create a permanent table. And so to do that, I have to use a different kind of query, and that would be a make table and so on and so forth. So anyway, so there's a make table, there's an append, update, and cross tab, and a delete. We'll work through those. So the first one I want to do is called the append query. Append query says I want to take and add one table to the bottom of another table, or add it in there, okay? So it works kind of like this. I'm going to remove that table. All right, so we're just starting off query fresh. Okay. Then right in the middle of the ribbon, it says show tables. And you can bring that thing back up if you want it. And it works like this. You tell it, you pick the table that has the new information or the additional information. So here you would pick, I've got one called twins, which I've got a little bit more information about some kids. I got some families with twins that I didn't know about before, so I'm going to add those into the database. So I picked the one that says just twins. Okay. And then we click on append. Append to what table? So then over here, there's a little drop-down menu you can pick from, and we're going to pick kids and say OK. So the process is the same here. Figure out what you want to do, pick the tables, and pick the columns, and then pick the rows, right? Now, when you append, you don't necessarily have to append all fields if you don't want to. You can just tell, here's an additional field with some additional information and stuff like that. But in this case, I do want to, the twins has got the full set of data, just like kids have the full set, the full set of fields. So this little asterisk up here, that says all fields. So it's just, instead of me picking them one by one, I can do this. Okay. And then I could also say, well, I don't necessarily want to import everything from this twins table into the kids table, or append, I guess is what they call it. I could apply some criteria down here, say only, these records that meet this criteria should be added to the new table. But again, I want to add everything in it, so I don't have to do anything here. And then I'm just going to run this. And it says you're about to append 50 rows. And they're in the kids table now. Okay. So that's an append query. Okay, I don't need to save this, so I'll just throw it away. Yeah, I was gonna just throw it away, right? Close. No. There we go. All right, now in this kid's table, it looks a little bit different, and that field called child driver, whether they have a driver's license or not, we just got Y's where they have a license and then it's a null, a blank value if there's nothing there, and I want to fix that so it says yes and no. Okay. Well, I obviously don't want to go through and type in no, 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 because that would take a long time because I've got, 21,241 records in this table at this point. Okay. So what we're going to do is what's called an update query. I want to change values in a particular field to new, depending on criteria and all that sort of stuff. So we'll just close out of here. We'll do a create, query design. Kids is the one we're dealing with, so we'll say pick that one, and that's the only one we need. And then update query, again up on the ribbon towards the left. It's a different kind of query. Okay. So then you pick the table that you want to work on, then you pick the field that you want to work on. In this case, it's child driver. Okay. Then you say, here's the new value. So here we, in quotes, we go double quote and double quote. Okay. Criteria. If we leave that criteria blank, it's going to make that entire field, that entire column, ends. And so we're going to we don't want that to happen because then we're going to lose all the information about which children actually did have a driver's license. So we want to selectively apply that update. So to do that, down there where it says criteria, you would pick which, if it meets this criteria, then it'll put an N in there. And so in this case, it would be is null. Right. So if it's empty, we want to put an N there and so on. Okay. So the query works pretty much the same as before. You pick the table, pick the field, pick the records. And you can apply more elaborate criteria here if you want. Usually, the best way to do this is if you got more than one field to update, you want to do it in separate queries because it gets complicated. So a way to simplify your life is just to do one field at a time in your updates. Okay. You can do more than that, but I don't want to get into how that has to work. All right. So any question about update queries? Again, I've got a column, a field, and I want to go through and update certain values in there. And so, tell what the new value is going to be, and then I give it some criteria, and we'll go ahead and do that. Okay. All right. Now, again, I don't want to, I got to run this query. I should update my. Now, again, here it says you're about to update 18,478 records. There's no undo here, so once we commit this, it's going to do that, and it would be, in this case, we could go back and change all the ends back to nulls. But again, you want to be careful here. And it's done, and then we can throw this query away because we don't need it anymore, and stuff like that. All right. Now, let's just say that we're going to get, yes.
How do you run it again?
Just click on that, the exclamation point. Or it says execute run, right? It says run over the, left. Okay. So now let's say, for whatever reasons, we want to break teenagers out from, we want to create two files, one that has teenagers in it and one that has the rest of the kids in it. Okay. So to do that, we got to create two more queries. First query we want to create. Go back to query design. Obviously, we're working with the kids table. And I'm just going to pick the asterisk because I want all fields, because I want to copy all the information about teenagers to a new table. And then I'm going to apply some criteria so I can pick child date of birth again here. Okay. So if I leave it like this, child date of birth is going to show up twice in the new table, and obviously I don't need it twice in the new table. So if I were to just uncheck the one where I'm doing criteria, I can use it for criteria purposes, but it won't actually get added to the new table. Okay. And so let's see. Well, let's say anybody who turned 13 as of January 1st of this year, so that would bring it back to January 1st, 2000, right? So anybody born before January 1st, 2000 is 13 years old. Okay? If I do it that way, then I don't have to calculate their age and do all that sort of stuff. It just saves me creating a calculation. So down here, I would just say less than, because I want a date before that. Less than, and then again, it's a date, so it has to go in pound symbols. Pound 01/01/2000 pound sign. Okay. And then I'm just going to run this just to test it. And that looks right. I just ran that as a selection query so I can look at it and just test it to see if everything looks the way I want it to. And that's what I want. So now all I have to do is go back into design view and just change that to a make table. And it's going to ask you, what do you want to call the new table? I don't know, let's call it teens or whatever, teenagers, teens will be good enough, I guess, for me. Like that. And then you say, okay. And then you get ready to run. Okay, so we're all ready to run it. And we can just run it. And it says you're about to paste 6,600 records into the new table. In this case, we're pretty safe because all we're doing is making a copy. We're not actually taking them out of the original table. So they're still in the kids table. So here, we don't have to think as hard about it. And so we've created a new table. Okay. And if you look over here now, you can see teens. And I'm just going to go into design view for a second. And it'll retain all the field size, field type information from the original table. The only thing you'd have to do here is if you're going to use this, is you'd have to apply a primary key and then go back into table relationships and add that relationship if you're going to use this table. Okay. So those, we'll just skip those steps because you guys know how to do that at this point. But you'd have to do that before you actually want to properly use it. Anyway, close. Okay. Now then, we don't want those teenagers in two places. So the next step in the process would be to get them out of the kids table. Right? All we did was we made a copy of them, put them in a new table. Now we want to get rid of them from the old table. So here, then you just pick the delete query. And you're all set to go. We ran a selection query once. It looked exactly what we wanted. We've created a backup copy. So if something goes wrong here, we've preserved what we're going to delete here. So we're fairly safe. We can run this. And it says you're about to delete 6,624 rows from the kids table. And we can just say yes. And they're gone. So we've split kids into two parts now. There's pre-teenagers and there's teenagers. And then probably what would happen in the next step is we'd get a bunch of additional information about teenagers. And so we could create some extra fields in the teen file or the teen table and go on and do stuff like that. So questions about any of those? Okay. And those other ones up there, the union, pass-through, and data definition, that's beyond the scope of what we're going to be doing here. But they're all specialized kind of queries. Generally speaking, we'll do crosstab later this morning. But these right here, these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are the ones you would use on a day-to-day basis. Okay. All right. So your turn. Let me see if I can bring this up for you. Now, for your practice stuff, you should use the other database in there. I know this is going to be a little bit confusing this morning. There's one just called Market. That's the one you're going to want to use when you're working on your own. Okay. And then I've got a set of instructions for you here. I'll pull them up on the screen. And that Access Student 3. So go ahead and do the stuff that's in practice 1. These little numbers in blue over here are the number of records that would show up in the table when you're done, so you can use that to check your work to see if you're on the right track or not. Okay, so go ahead and work on that, and then we'll go on and do more kinds of queries.